Okay. Good morning, guys. We're going to give everyone another few minutes. If you're here, if you want to put your name in the chat for your attendance, that would be great. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, those of you just coming in, please put your name in the chat for your attendance. Thank you. We're going to give everyone 3 more minutes and then we'll get started. Okay, so welcome. We have made it to another Friday. We are about halfway through the semester, if you can believe that. So time is moving by. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where we are in Canvas, and then we'll jump right into our class today and our paper discussion, and talk about what we got on the horizon. Okay. So we are here in week 7. We're going to be doing our 3rd literature discussion. So again, this class is not just about writing, it's also about reading. And so we want to make sure that we get a lot of practice reading scientific papers. Textbooks are great. I'm a huge fan of textbooks for learning the basics, but when you want to know the cutting edge and what's happening in science, you really got to read the literature, and you have to be able to read a scientific paper. So that's what we're going to work on today. Outside of class, you're going to submit a complete summary and analysis for the paper. Keep in mind, again, it's 2 parts. So you're summarizing, you're telling me what the paper is about, and then you're providing some sort of analysis. And in the assignment page, I have provided a list of questions to consider when writing up your summary and your analysis. Your asynchronous material for the rest of the week and due Sunday is a video about making tables and graphs and what kinds of things you need to have in your tables and graphs. And then you're going to practice that by editing or critiquing some tables and graphs that I show you. And then you're going to take the data that you have from that reaction time lab. So hopefully you did not delete that assignment somewhere, so you still have that data. And you're going to make your own figures for that. And what we're doing, again, is we're slowly building that lab report. So I want you to make some tables and graphs for that data, and then that's due Sunday. And then by next week, you're going to peer review someone else's tables and graphs. So the way that Canvas peer review works, as a reminder, is that on the due date, like the minute after things are due, it will randomly assign a peer review to someone who has turned in their assignment. So if you turn in your assignment late, you won't get a peer review automatically. And what that means is not only are you going to face a late penalty for the first assignment, you're going to have an issue with that second assignment. So it's super, super important that you turn in your tables and graphs on time, okay? You also have a journal prompt due. And then next week, we're gonna be working with Excel. So what I want you guys to do for this first one, again, is I want you to make an attempt at tables and graphs on your own. And then next week, we'll dive into Excel. And the way that we're framing this, you try it, I give you more information, you correct it. So we kind of do that back and forth, okay? Before we jump in to today's assignment, I also want to talk about the structure for next week. We are a relatively small group. It's a class of 14 total. And in the beginning, we had roughly equal group sizes on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Since then, things have shifted. And very frequently, I've shown up to a class of 0 or a class of 1. So that's why we're shifting things starting on next week. On Monday will be the in-person time. So if you want in-person time, you will come on Monday. I've also heard from people that it's hard to do all of the assignments over the weekend. So if you go to class on Friday and then after that you have to do all of the assignments due Sunday, that can create some stress for people. So that's why we're going to move the online class to Wednesday. So Monday will be the in-person class and Wednesday will be the online class, again from 10:10 to 11 a.m. The other little caveat is the biology department told me that they needed the classroom that we've been usually using. So we're going to move up to the second floor. So if you do come in person on Monday, we will be, and I'll send this out in an announcement, we'll be in Health Science Center, room 261, because they need our classroom. They had some issues with another classroom, and so they've been kind of shuffling people around, and so we'll be moving upstairs. Okay, so Monday, Health Science Center 261, 10:10 if you want an in-person experience. Wednesday, Zoom 10:10 if you want the online experience. That way you'll have from Wednesday to Sunday to complete all of your asynchronous assignments, and that should give you guys a little bit more time as well. So I feel like that is a good strategy. Okay, if you have issues with that, please send me an email and we can talk about it. Today, again, is our third literature review. So what this paper used is it's from Science in the Classroom. And what I like about this website is they give you like a brief introduction to why this paper is important. And then they have these little learning lens on the side. And the most useful one, I think, is the glossary. So if you click on glossary, what you'll see is these words that you might not understand, this jargon, it all of a sudden becomes, clear. So they define those things. So avoidance behavior, maybe you don't know what that is. Behaviors that can help someone escape uncomfortable feelings and unpleasant situations. Great. Okay. So I think that makes this a little bit easier to use. Okay. So if let me share the PowerPoint here. Oh, well, it would help if I opened the PowerPoint, I guess. Give me 1 second. Let me just pull open this. So we're going to be following along with the PowerPoint. So for today's attendance quiz, if you guys want to, while I open this stuff up, for today's attendance quiz, if you want to give me a rating 1 through 10 of what you think of this paper, 1 being, this is garbage. Why did you make me read this? This is the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life. And 10 being, this is the best paper in the entire world. It's completely changed what I thought about science and myself and the world, and there are no flaws with it whatsoever. So give me a rating 1 to 10 as your attendance quiz, and then put your rating in the chat and we'll see where we end up. Okay, and while you do that, I will prep a little PowerPoint we got going on here. Okay, 4. Oof, 6. Raquel, 4. I like it. We're tough today. 6, 6, 5, 6. Okay. So mediocre at best seems to be the consensus 5. You guys are tough cookies. I like it. Okay. So what I like to do, and again, I am not very technologically savvy, which is super fun for online education. I like to print out the paper. So you can see I printed it because I like to kind of write all over it. And so one of the things, let's talk about the structure of the paper first. So this paper, Carrots and Sticks Fail to Change Behavior in Cocaine Addiction, is published in Science. So the previous 2 papers that we've read were conducted by undergraduates, and they were published in journals specific for undergrad research, right? And they only had 2 authors. So it was the student who did the research and the professor who kind of guided and mentored and paid for the research. This, you can see, has a lot more authors, right? So a lot more people were involved with this work. The other thing I want you to notice is that the format is weird. And that's because this is published in Science. Now, there are 3 big journals specifically for biomedical science, but kind of for all biological science, that kind of dominate the field. And if you get published in here, it's like, oh, it's a big deal. Congratulations. And that is cell, science, and nature. Cell, science, nature, the big three. So science is one of the big three, but they're weird in how they publish. First of all, they have a word limit. So you'll notice that it is a relatively short paper. They have a word limit. Because of that, to get around the word limit, they do some kind of sneaky things. The first sneaky thing that they do is they make their figure legends their method section. So rather than having a section that said methods, and then they put the methods, they instead hide the methods in the figure legend because the figure legend doesn't count against their word count limit. So it's sneaky. It does make it hard to read. The other thing about them is they can only have 2 figures, which is why the figures are big and they have lots of different panels. Okay, so that is kind of a drawback for science. People like it because they're short, so you can read through them quickly and kind of get the general idea. I don't prefer this format because I feel like it relies heavily on jargon, which is why the Science in the Classroom website is good because it will explain some of this jargon. Okay, so I'm going to open up this PowerPoint and briefly go over a few background concepts, and then we'll talk about the paper as a group. So again, this is our 3rd literature discussion. We've moved up and up in terms of the difficulty of the paper here. Our learning objectives, again, are to analyze and critique a scientific paper. And so we're doing this one, carrots and sticks, fail to change behavior in cocaine addiction. And this is from the University of Cambridge, which is in the UK. Some key concepts here are about, the main one is about cocaine addiction. So I'm going to stop this actually. Okay, so because the paper isn't broken down into sections really well, slash at all, it's kind of hard to tell, like, this is the introduction, this is the methods. So what I'll do is I'll guide you by saying like the first few paragraphs, second few paragraphs, etc. Okay, so let's start. Ify, do you want to tell us about just the general paper topic? So what were they looking at? What were they trying to find? Ify, are you there? Okay, we'll skip you. Kristen, do you want to tell us the general concept about the paper?
That was it to determine if cocaine usage was a goal-directed behavior that turned into a habit behavior.
Exactly. So we're looking at why do people do drugs? Why are people addicted to drugs? Is it goal-directed or is it habit-directed? Amy, do you want to tell us what we mean when we say goal-directed? What does that mean?
Goal-directed is like more of a let's see how I put it. Like it's more of like an incentive than really anything else. Like they are wanting to do it and to reach that goal versus anything else.
Yeah, so the goal, good job. So the goal-directed behavior, again, is there's a purpose behind it. And the purpose is either, the ones that they laid out, are to get that rush, that high feeling, or to decrease and avoid the discomfort that they're feeling in their life. So they're doing drugs, they're doing cocaine specifically to either feel high and feel that rush, or to help decrease the negative emotions that they're experiencing in their current life. So that's the goal. And then the habit is they've become addicted. So this has become a routine in their life, in the same way that waking up and brushing your teeth is a habit for you. Okay, so that's our major question. Is cocaine addiction more of a goal seeking or is it more habit seeking? And then also they wanted to look at, how can we change that, right? Is it positive reinforcement or is it negative reinforcement that can change this behavior? Okay, so Christina, do you want to tell us what we mean when we say positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement?
Positive can be that when you do something, you get like a reward, and the negative, you can get a shock, like the paper was talking about.
Yeah, so they use like a very literal negative reward, a negative consequence of an actual painful electrical shock. But in everyday life, there are consequences for our behaviors, right? There can be positive consequences, like if you study and you get a good grade, that's like a positive consequence, a positive reward for your behavior. And negative rewards can just be the negative consequences of your behavior. It doesn't have to always be as literal as like an electrical shock. Yes. Okay. Sierra, do you want to tell us about the methods of what did they do? And just start with like the participants. Who did they enroll? How many people? What were they looking for? That sort of stuff.
They had 72 individuals who were like actively using cocaine and 53 that were healthy. And they used this DSM IVTR thing.
Uh-huh.
And, I was kind of confused about how, like, you know, they had the little characters, but they said like if they clicked the little cartoon animal character that it was right and they would be rewarded for it, and versus if they clicked like the blank space, they would have like a negative punishment for that.
Yeah. Okay. So this paper is falls in the scheme of like psychology research. Now, it's not my specialty, so I'm just going to say that. But this is set up in a very traditional psychology paper way. And so if you read a lot of psychology journals, things about learning, things about addiction, you'll see similar setups. So basically, they have a computer game that the participants are playing. And in the beginning, they're clicking on different pictures of animals and they're learning, okay, if I click on the elephant, a little thing pops up like, good job, versus if I click on the monkey, I'm not supposed to click on that. And so they have a training session where they're learning like, okay, click on elephant, click on elephant, click on elephant. And they're going through. And in the positive reinforcement, they think that they're going to get money if they do really well. So those points are represented as like dollars. Like, okay, I got $5. Oh, I got another $5. And so that creates like the positive reinforcement for learning. Why they're doing well is they want to get money. The negative reinforcement scenario is when they click on the wrong picture, they get an electrical shock to their hands, right? And so in my mind, you'll very quickly learn, do not click on elephant because you're getting zapped when you do it. Okay, so that's the general scheme of the method. So they're learning at a computer game, either with a positive reinforcement or with a negative reinforcement. Okay, so let's look at figure 1, which is where things get kind of weird. So they have a very limited amount of space and words, and so these figures get very complicated. Kylie, do you want to just tell us generally what figure 1 shows?
It's showing basically how the game would work in a way, but like you said, it is kind of confusing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's break it down together. So figure 1A is showing just the learning setup that they have, right? So you're seeing a picture and you're learning like, oh, I click on this key and that's correct, versus I click on this other key and that's incorrect, and I'm doing it to try to get points. Haley, do you want to tell us which group did better? Which group was more accurate? Was it the control people or they're calling them CUI, or the cocaine, people who are having cocaine problems?
The control people did better.
The control people did better, exactly. So in this game, at the very beginning, the control people learned better or they performed better. So that's saying that even with positive reinforcement, even with the idea of like fake money on the line, you're winning $5, $10, $20, the cocaine people didn't respond as well to that positive reinforcement. That's how they're framing this, okay? Then in B, they're going to decrease the reward amount. So they call this the behavioral test of outcome, or the outcome devaluation. So rather than clicking on elephant and getting $5, now when you click on elephant, it's 0. And they want to see now who's more accurate, who can learn, oh, this thing that used to bring me rewards no longer brings me rewards. Michaela, which group did better in figure 1B, the controls or the cocaine addicted people? Okay. Are you able to unmute? No? Okay. Raquel, do you want to take a shot? Tell me which group did better in 1B.
In 1B,
Mhm.
again, control group did better than cocaine group.
Yes, exactly. So not only did the control people learn it better the first time, they also were able to shift, right? And say, oh, this thing that used to bring me rewards is no longer bringing me rewards, right? So then what they did in figure C is they're trying to determine, are they clicking on these pictures because of a habit, because they've formed a habit of like, oh, I just click on random things, or because they're doing this for a goal directed? Are they actually motivated by this positive reinforcement of the money? And so to do that, they compared the response time and the responses for the valued, the ones that had the positive reinforcement, versus the devalued. And what they saw here is that while their normal or the control people changed their response when they lost that positive reinforcement, they're like, oh, elephant doesn't bring me money anymore. I'm not going to click on elephant. The cocaine people had no change. They were still just randomly clicking. And so this points, my audio doesn't work. I'm sorry about that, Michaela. I'll have you type things. We'll do it that way, okay? And so this points again to that idea of it being a habit. So they're not doing it to get that positive reinforcement. They're instead doing it for a habit. Okay, let's talk about figure 2. So Michaela, if you want to start typing about figure 2B, who's doing better, control or cocaine people, I'll explain figure 2 in general. Okay, we'll do it that way. So figure 2, this we call classical conditioning, because these are kind of like the old school experiments that they used to do in psychology research with electrical shocks, which I would never sign up for because I'm a baby. But what they would do is you had your hands hooked up to this little electrical pad, and if you clicked on the wrong thing, now rather than not getting money, you would get an electrical shock. So this is a very serious form of negative reinforcement, right? And so in figure 2B, they measured who was doing better, who is more accurate with this negative reinforcement. Michaela is correct. The control group does better. So not only are the cocaine people not responding to positive stimuli or positive reinforcement, they're not responding to negative reinforcement either, okay? And they measured skin conductance. And so what they mean by skin conductance is how sweaty your hands get. Kristen, can you think of an example when of a time in your life when your hands get really sweaty?
Like when you're nervous.
When you're nervous, right? When you're nervous, your hands get sweaty. For me, I have a phobia of needles. And so whenever I have to go and get a shot or give blood or something, my hands get drenched in sweat. It's really, really gross. So what they're measuring is, are they doing worse at this shocked thing because they're anxious, because they're getting nervous? No. What they see is no, they're not. They're not more nervous, they're not more anxious than the control group. They're just doing worse at the test. And so similar to what they did in figure 1 with the positive reinforcement, again, they're going to devalue the negative reinforcement. So things that used to shock them are now no longer going to shock them. And here, what they found is that for the devalued outcome, now there was no difference. So now there's no difference when we decrease that negative consequence between the control and the cocaine addicted people. Okay, Amy, what did you think of their methods? Do you think that they were a good way to measure what they think they were measuring? Did you see any flaws with their methods?
I thought it was a pretty good experiment overall. Maybe trying a few different other things would be a good idea rather than just doing like this little game, because of like the cognizance of the cocaine people might be is completely different than the ones that don't use cocaine. So there could be other methods that they could try.
Okay, good. So maybe take it beyond just playing a computer game of animals.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Christina, what do you think about the results? Do you think that they were drawing appropriate conclusions from their experiments?
When looking at figure 1, yes, but figure 2, not so much.
Okay, you want to expand on that? What do you mean?
Because for figure, hold on, I'm putting my notes, I'm sorry.
You're good. You're right on track too. So keep going.
It was showing how like the cocaine people had like a lower reaction and performance versus figure two. It showed that that they actually did quite well. Well, not better, but yeah, than testing them for nervousness or sweating.
Yeah. So if we look at figure 2D, right? With the positive reinforcement, there was a difference in that devalued outcome. So when you took away the stimulus, the cocaine addicted people were still clicking on the buttons, even though they were no longer winning money. For the negative one, if we look at figure 2D, the comparison between devalued outcome, right? There seems to be no difference there in terms of correct responses. So it seems like they were able to learn, oh, this one isn't shocking me. So there does seem to be some benefit then maybe to changing a negative reinforcement or getting rid of things that are negative reinforcement. They might respond to that. Okay. How does this, Sierra, do you want to see if you could relate what this study is showing to how we as a society deal with people who have drug addictions? What does this tell us about our treatment of people who are struggling with drug addiction?
I would just say I agree with Amy when she said like I don't think like this was the best way to like monitor those people and stuff. I think like maybe they should do something like, because remember that test, the DSM test was talking about how they can't do some normal functions and stuff. So maybe like have them like maybe like do flashcards or something, like multiplication tables or something like that. I don't know.
Okay, that's a good idea. So a different kind of test. So Kylie, in our society, what do we usually do for people who have drug addictions? Do we give like positive reinforcement for their good behaviors, or do we give negative reinforcement and punish bad behaviors?
I feel like in general, if you have drug addiction, you're usually put in jail or hospitalized. But then in different scenarios with like different drugs, like including alcohol, which isn't as hard of a drug,
Yeah.
it's not really one. If you go to AA, then you get like chips, which are positive reinforcement, but it's still not overwhelmingly positive. So the negative really outweighs the positive.
Yeah. So, I mean, what this paper is showing is, at least at the onset, right, before they devalued things, that the people who are addicted to cocaine are not responding the same way that non-addicted people are to positive and negative reinforcement. And so while for us, something like a criminal charge or jail time or a fine might be like a very serious negative consequence, if people have a cocaine problem, they're not responding in the same way. And so that negative reinforcement might not work as well on someone who has a serious addiction. And same with the positive reinforcement, right? They didn't learn from the positive either. So that's where the title comes from, the carrots and the sticks. We always talk about, what's going to help people, the carrot or the stick, the carrot being positive reinforcement and the stick being negative reinforcement. And this is showing that like they have impairments with both positive and negative reinforcement. So going back to their original questions, they had two questions, right? They were looking at what will work better, positive or negative reinforcement, and they found that neither one worked really well, right, compared to controls. And then they were also looking at whether it's a goal-driven behavior or whether it's a habit-driven behavior. So Raquel, what do you think? Do you think it's goal-driven or habit-driven?
What, the cocaine or the?
Cocaine. So are the people who have the cocaine addiction, based on the data, are they behaving in a goal-directed way or are they behaving in a habit-forming way?
According to this experiment,
Yes.
I think goal.
Okay, so let's look at that again. So
No.
the way that good try though, good try. So this is the tricky part. The way that they were testing whether it's a goal-driven or a habit-driven was through those devaluing experiments, right? So with the positive reinforcement, you click on elephant, you get $5. And then they changed it You click on elephant, you get $0. And they wanted to see, do you still keep clicking on elephant because you've developed a habit of clicking on elephant? Or are you able to shift your thinking? The control groups were able to shift their thinking, but the cocaine addicted people weren't for the positive reinforcement. They still kept clicking on elephant. So that would give us more towards the habit, right? That they are faster at developing habits. And so that might be part of what explains their drug addictive behaviors. Now, it gets tricky because in figure 2, they didn't see that outcome. They didn't see that as much with the negative reinforcement. And so that hypothesis, really, I don't think that they are able to say one way or the other. I don't think that they're able to say whether it's goal-driven or habit-driven, okay? Evie, is your audio working or no? No, okay. Michaela, in the chat, do you want to type overall what you thought the paper could do to improve? While you type, I'll go back to Kristen. Do you want to tell us one thing that you think the paper could do to improve? What the authors could have done better?
They could have done the format better. It kind of all meshed together, so it was kind of hard to differentiate whatever they were trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
this is a challenging paper to read, right? Because it was all mushed together. That's not really on the authors, that's on the journal. The journal has said that this is how we want our papers to be, just a continuous blob of text with giant figures and figure legends. But it does make it challenging. It does make it challenging. Michaela says, I think the authors could have formatted it better as well, and I think the experiment could have been improved, right? So maybe done some different experiments like Amy and Sierra brought up, maybe not a computer game, right? That could have helped. Okay. At the end, in what would be their discussion section if they actually labeled it as a discussion section, they ask the question of how can we apply these to other addictive and compulsive behaviors. So Kylie, do you want to talk about what other kinds of behaviors they think this research could be applicable to?
Just give me 1 second.
Okay, yeah, so find it. So it's the last like 2 paragraphs.
They said OCD, alcohol addiction, eating disorders.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So they said that this whole idea of positive and negative reinforcement, that you can look at it with other types of addictive and compulsive behaviors. So not just drug addictions or alcohol addiction, but also OCD, which it has a compulsive element to it, and eating disorders, which have a compulsive disorder to it. Okay. So that's kind of how they reached out beyond. So Raquel, what did you like about this paper? Yeah, we heard some negatives. Tell me something positive.
I like how they wanted to study the effects of cocaine on the brain, but that's it, because I don't agree about their methods and all that.
Yeah. So, it's one of those papers where they had a good idea to start out with, a good topic that they were interested in, but maybe not the best in terms of structure, methods, all of that. Okay. So in the other class group, people brought up that they would like to see them look at other drugs. Traditionally, when you read about addiction, just because of money and severity, most people have looked at or studied cocaine and heroin. Those are kind of like the big drugs that people research, in part because they're some of the most addictive drugs. They have the biggest cost to society. But people don't really look as much at other drugs. Like marijuana is very under-researched. Meth is starting to be researched more now, but it is hard because when you write a paper, as you guys are learning, in the introduction, you want to talk about what other people have done. And if you can't find papers that say like, other people have looked at this drug and this is what they know, it's kind of hard to write. It's kind of hard to base that on. So that is part of the reason why they focused on cocaine. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is in the chat, give me, now that we've talked about it, a 1 through 10 again. So what do you think of this paper? 1 being a dumpster fire and 10 being we should print it on gold. 5, still 6, 5, 6, 6. Okay, so we're still in that kind of 5, 6 range. Awesome. 5, 6, 5. Okay. So 6. Yeah. Medium, a mediocre paper. This shows you that, like, the other thing I want you guys to take away from this is that even if something is published in a big fancy journal like Science, that does not mean that it is a 10 paper, right? You're going to find some 8 and 9 papers in a journal like Science or Nature or Cell, a big journal, but you're going to find some 5s and 6s, some kind of crappy papers. And the reason that this was published, I can't tell you like the exact reason. It might be because they wanted to have some like diversity of topics. So maybe no one had written about cocaine for a little while and they were like, let's put this cocaine paper out there. It could be something terrible, like the editor of the paper is friends with the author of the paper and he said, yeah, I'll put your paper in my journal. That unfortunately does happen. Or it could be that they had a few other cocaine papers that they were publishing and they made like a bundle of articles about cocaine and they just wanted like another one. So sometimes when you publish a paper, it's published because it's really good science, and other times it's published because you know the editor, and other times it's published because it's just kind of what they're looking to talk about. So it's important to keep in mind. Okay. Remember your asynchronous work. We're doing tables and graphs. If you guys have any questions, you can unmute and ask about them. Otherwise, what you should do for the rest of what will be this class period is work on that summary and analysis. So type up your responses about what did the paper talk about and what do you think, and submit that. And I will see you guys in person on Monday or virtually on Wednesday. You guys are good to go. I'll stick around if you have any questions. Adam, can you hear me?